Now, Chris, tell us, how has it come to this? A political leader in Venezuela forced to seek asylum in another country.
Well, this is a fully autocratic, near criminal regime in Venezuela that, under an international commitment established in October last year, agreed to hold elections, then put up a whole series of obstacles to those elections, including prohibiting the winner of the opposition primary, Maria Machado, from running. Edmundo Gonzalez was a stand-in candidate. Much of the world hoped that the elections on July 28th would be relatively free and fair. They weren't. But clearly, the government is claiming victory, but has not shown any of the results that support that victory. The opposition has results from about 25,000 of the voting stations and has verified them. So what the government right now in Maduro is trying to do is repress and trying to move on to eliminate the opposition. And this effort right now is an effort to threaten the winner of the likely winner of the elections, Edmundo Gonzalez, and get him out of the country so he's not under the government's skin so much and in exile, where he will be able to make less noise and not have to arrest him too. I mean, this is, turning him into a political martyr was certainly not what the opposition, or rather the government, wanted to do. It wanted to simply get him out of the country.
Well, did Edmundo Gonzalez have any other choice but to flee?
No, he didn't. There was an arrest warrant out for him for usurpation of power, for fabricating government documents, for effectively terrorism. And he's a 75-year-old retired diplomat. He was, in no conditions to be placed into jail. But also, again, the government didn't really want to. This is really a solution that the government actively sought. The idea that the government's now claiming this as a victory for rule of law is ridiculous when they've detained more than 2,000 of their own citizens for peacefully protesting.
Well, what does this mean for the opposition in Venezuela now and its supporters who still claim Nicolas Maduro did not win the July election?
Yvonne, we'll have to see. I think right now this is sort of a point of reflection for the opposition. International pressure has yielded no efforts and no results in terms of the dialogue by the government. The opposition has been relying mostly on street protests. This movement and moment and the repression that has preceded it is going to act as a disincentive for people to turn out on the streets to protest the government. The hope has been that somehow the government would fracture and some moderate elements within the inner circle would break and maybe call for some negotiation or change. That clearly hasn't happened. The one good thing about having Edmundo Gonzalez out of the country, he's a retired diplomat, is that now he's free to go to Brazil and Mexico, Colombia, and other countries, and the EU, to begin to lobby for a more coherent, consistent policy of the international community to further isolate this regime and hopefully put pressure on it to bring it to the negotiating table.
To what extent can he continue to fight and campaign for democracy while in exile?
The truth is, it is difficult. And there's a whole line of former opposition leaders who fled into exile and whose ability to rally Venezuelans has been diminished. Leopoldo Lopez in Madrid, Julio Borges, who's also in Madrid, their stature within the country has been diminished, and that's going to happen to Edmundo Gonzalez. What is important, first of all, is Edmundo does now have, as probably the duly president-elect of Venezuela, a certain authority to travel internationally, but also the figurehead of all of this. The woman who won the primary, Maria Machado, remains in Venezuela very courageously. She's also in hiding. There's also been investigation for her arrest. She remains there, and she is really sort of, in many ways, the charismatic front person for the opposition movement, and that's important.
And you mentioned also that there has been international pressure on Venezuela. Other countries have become involved, asked the government to publish the full results of the vote, but the Maduro government hasn't done so. These countries' relations have been affected. For example, Argentina.
Yeah, this is the Maduro government brooks no opposition at all, internationally or domestically. So, for example, when the Chilean president, who's a center leftist, Gabriel Boric, questioned the election results, he actually says they're not legitimate. He was denounced. In other cases, in Ecuador, for example, they've also questioned the election results, and the government of Venezuela, of Maduro, shut down diplomatic relations with Ecuador. Same with Argentina. So, yes, this is the government that does not want to have any sort of questioning of its authority. But at a certain point, some elements within the government have to question whether this is going to last for the next 6 years, which will be Maduro's next term.
Well, Dr. Christopher Sabatini, really good to get your thoughts. Thanks so much for joining The World.
Thanks, Yvonne.